Mr. President, Namibia thanks you for organizing this open debate on the important topic of the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question. I would also like to thank the Special Coordinator for the Middle East process for his briefing on the situation in the region, and my delegation aligns itself with the statement that will be delivered by the Distinguished Permanent Representative of Azerbaijan on behalf of the Non-Aligned Movement later this afternoon. Mr. President, since my last statement before this August body on this most fundamental issue of international peace and security, the situation on the ground has not changed. Furthermore, as outlined by the Special Coordinator in his 11th briefing to the Security Council on the implementation of Council Resolution 2334, no concrete steps have been taken to implement this resolution. No steps were taken to immediately and completely cease all settlement activity in the occupied Palestinian territory, including in East Jerusalem. On the contrary, Israeli authorities advanced some 3,000 housing units in the occupied West Bank, including some 400 units in East Jerusalem. I take this opportunity to reiterate that settlements are illegal under international law and represent an obstacle to peace and to the two-state solution. We are also extremely concerned at statements made on Israel's annexation of the Jordan Valley. Annexation is strictly prohibited under international law. Demolitions and seizures of Palestinian-owned structures by Israeli authorities also represent an obstacle to peace. These actions have continued unabated, displacing men, women, and children. Mr. President, UNRWA plays a fundamental role in the region. The agency provides services to the more than 5 million Palestinian refugees in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, and Gaza. This provision of vital services represents a stabilizing element in a region that continues to be the victim of violence. Namibia remains concerned by the ongoing financial shortfall that UNRWA continues to suffer from. We also take this opportunity to reaffirm Namibia's support for the agency and look forward to the renewal of its mandate. Mr. President, we take note of the overall levels of violence in Gaza, that they have decreased. We take this opportunity to condemn all forms of violence committed against civilians. Namibia welcomes the increase in energy supply to households in Gaza, which has more than doubled, as reported by the Special Coordinator. The easing of the import and export restrictions by Israel and the extension of the permitted fishing zone to 15 nautical miles from the coast are also welcome developments. Despite these positive steps taken, the humanitarian situation remains extremely concerning. Namibia remains particularly worried about the state of the health system, which remains on the brink of collapse. In July, 44% of essential medicines in Gaza were completely depleted, and 26% of essential medical disposables had less than a month's supply remaining. These staggering numbers therefore underline the fundamental ongoing presence of the UNRWA health centers, which see an average of 100 patients a day. Mr. President, there is an urgency to solve the ongoing fiscal crisis faced by the Palestinian Authority. The continuation of this crisis is impacting an already fragile Palestinian economy and threatens to destabilize an already volatile situation. We urge parties to implement and respect their bilateral agreements. Mr. President, it has been almost 3 years since the adoption of the historic 2334 resolution. This resolution has provided Palestinians with hope and expectations for a solution to be found to this drawn-out conflict. However, since its adoption, the humanitarian, social, and political situation has only worsened and tensions have risen drastically. Actions taken have severely undermined the process of reaching a mutually acceptable, just, and lasting solution. The people of Palestine have the fundamental right to self-determination and independence. We must achieve a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians with the establishment of two states coexisting in an atmosphere of peace and security. No amount of humanitarian and economic support can substitute a negotiated two-state solution, which is the only solution to meet the legitimate aspirations and security needs of both Israelis and Palestinians. I thank you. Mr. President, I will now deliver a statement in my capacity as Vice Chair of the Committee on the Exercise of Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People under Rule 39. On behalf of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, I would like at the outset to commend the leadership of the delegation of South Africa in its presidency of the Security Council this month. Mr. President, as we gather quarterly in this Council to collectively consider the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question, I can only lament the ongoing illegal occupation of the Palestinian territory and the worsening situation on the ground, negatively impacting the rights of Palestinians, including children, but also the security of Israelis and the prospects for a peaceful and just solution of the question of Palestine, which has already been too long delayed. Violence and loss of life have continued. Illegal Israeli settlements have expanded. Demolitions of Palestinian homes and evictions of their inhabitants have accelerated. And the humanitarian and economic situation in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, have continued to deteriorate under the oppressive weight and as a result of the illegal practices of Israel's 52-year military occupation. Allow me to reiterate in the strongest terms that Israeli settlements in occupied areas are illegal under international law, and as reaffirmed inter alia in Security Council Resolution 2334, Israel must halt their expansion immediately and completely. The committee joins calls for reports of the Secretary General on implementation of Resolution 2334 to be provided in writing and to include Member States' reports on how they comply with operative paragraph 5, requiring Member States to distinguish in their dealings between Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. Such measures of distinction are of utmost necessity for upholding international law, including relevant UN resolutions, and ensuring non-support to and non-recognition of this illegal situation. In this regard, the committee looks forward to the publication by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights of the relevant database as mandated by Human Rights Council Resolution 31/36. The committee expresses its profound concern about escalating rhetoric and threats by Israeli officials regarding intentions to annex settlements and the Jordan Valley. The Jordan Valley makes up to 30% of the occupied West Bank and is home to more than 65,000 Palestinians. Annexation is strictly prohibited under international law and cannot go unchallenged by the international community, obliging this Council to act should such aggression be committed. As recently stated by the UN Special Rapporteur, Michael Link, and I quote, "By annexing these areas, Israel will further confine Palestinians to live in small, fragmented and disconnected cantons, while others will continue to live under Israeli military rule. The annexation, if realized, will effectively entrench a one-state reality of separate and vastly unequal legal systems, political rights and social opportunities," end of quote. The international community must consider what this would mean in regard to the viability of the long-standing international consensus on the two-state solution based on the pre-1967 borders, which such an action would effectively terminate. The committee also expresses its grave concerns regarding recurrent and rising tensions in Jerusalem at the holy sites, including continuing provocations, incitement and violations at Al-Aqsa Mosque. The committee urges Israeli authorities to abide by international law and avoid actions that undermine an already fragile situation there, and calls for respect of the historic and legal status quo and of the sanctity of the holy sites. Mr. President, in Gaza, the situation equally remains volatile as weekly Great March of Return demonstrations and ensuing casualties among Palestinian civilians have continued alongside the indiscriminate firing of rockets into Israel. The dire economic situation and especially insufficient energy supply, combined with scarcity of essential medicines, is causing a health crisis, with the health system reported to be near collapse. We reiterate our call to Israel, the occupying power, to abide by international standards in regard to the use of force. We also call on Palestinian militants in Gaza to stop the indiscriminate firing of rockets into southern Israel. The committee welcomes steps by the Ad hoc Liaison Committee, as presented in its September report, to bring relief to the population through a package of urgent humanitarian and economic interventions for Gaza. These measures should go hand in hand with efforts to address the continuing fiscal crisis faced by the Palestinian government, hampering its ability to deliver services to the population. So, President, in September, UNRWA was able to reopen 709 schools, allowing 530,000 refugee children to continue their education. However, the agency's financial situation remains challenging, albeit improved following the ministerial pledging conference held on 26 September in New York. The committee reiterates its call to all member states to provide UNRWA with reliable and sustainable funding necessary to deliver critical humanitarian services to the Palestinian refugees in all five fields of operation, contributing to their development, protection, and to stability in the region. We also urge member states to continue strongly supporting its General Assembly mandate, which is to be renewed in November. We commend Egypt and others for their ongoing efforts to advance the reconciliation process and call on the Palestinian parties to actively engage towards this end. Achieving reconciliation and holding general elections to be organized soon, as announced by President Mahmoud Abbas at the 74th high-level session of the General Assembly, would constitute positive steps toward reuniting the Palestinian people under a single, legitimate Palestinian national government. Finally, Mr. President, the only just and viable solution to ensure peace and prosperity in the region remains the international consensus on how to resolve this conflict. Two states living side by side in peace and security along the pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital of the Palestinian state. We are at a critical juncture, and it is time for the parties and the international community alike to break the inertia and walk the talk. We must implement all the resolutions adopted in this chamber and face our collective responsibility vis-à-vis past and future generations of Palestinians and Israelis. We all know that making the two-state solution a reality is the only way forward for peace and stability in the region. It's time to act to bring an end to the Israeli occupation, to realize long-denied Palestinian rights, including to self-determination and freedom, and to make peace a reality. The failure to act will only hasten the demise of the two-state solution and bring more conflict and suffering. I thank you.